Thanks so much. Good afternoon, everyone. As Scott said, my name is Jenny, and I do work with HSBC UK. My day job, I guess, involves supporting SMEs to grow and to achieve their ambitions in general. But I'm very passionate about the topic of sustainability as well. And in particular, supporting SMEs to transition, and it's in that capacity that I'm here today. For the past couple of years, I have helped to lead HSBC's strategy to engage, educate, and support SMEs to transition to net zero. With this in mind, I do just want to put a disclaimer out there. I am not a sustainability expert by any means, but as I said, I am passionate about the topic. And as you will see, I do sincerely believe that if we don't support SMEs to transition to net zero, we will miss a massive trick, and the economy as a whole will not manage to transition. Before I get started today, I would just like to provide a little bit of context about the session. The focus of the session is for SMEs who are right at the beginning of their journey. So I'll be speaking to you as an audience, assuming you are primarily SMEs or interested in thinking about this topic from the perspective of an SME. For example, you might have a lot of SMEs in your supply chain if you're a larger business. If that's not you, then obviously you're very welcome to go and explore some other areas across this brilliant expo. So, what am I going to cover today? First and foremost, I'm going to touch on why SMEs matter when we talk about sustainability, as I believe this is a really key segment that has actually been underserved and undersupported to transition to net zero. I'm going to touch on why sustainability matters, not from an environmental perspective. I'm assuming that by the fact that you're here today, you get that big picture. But why should SMEs even care about it? Why does it matter from a business or a commercial perspective? Frankly, if there isn't a financial or commercial rationale to change, the majority of people don't change. But hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll understand why it is imperative for SMEs to take action. And why they need to really push this up their list of priorities despite all of the other significant pressures that SMEs are under right now, and clearly continuing to be under with the cost of living inflation environment that we are in at the moment. I'm also going to touch on how SMEs can understand the sustainability of their own business, some typical actions I've seen SMEs take to begin their journey to transition, and then finally I'll just touch on the support that's available out there. I mentioned that this is an underserved segment, but I've definitely seen a rapid improvement in the last 12 months about the support and information that's available for SMEs out there. So let's start with why do SMEs matter? Following COP26 in November last year, and with COP27 fast approaching later this year, sustainability is increasingly in the spotlight. And while larger businesses have tended to be the focus, there is a lot that SMEs can and should be doing. And there is no way that the UK government will reach its net zero targets unless SMEs take action. According to YouGov, in 2021, the UK's 6 million small businesses make up 99% of the UK's enterprises. They employ 60% of the UK's workforce, and they generate 2.2 trillion of revenue to the economy. So it's absolutely crucial that these enterprises take action and reduce their carbon footprint. Transitioning to net zero presents a risk for SMEs, but also an opportunity. 43% of businesses do feel the pressure from customers to be more environmentally sustainable, according again to YouGov. But whether you view it as a risk or an opportunity, or perhaps a bit of both for your own business, you do ignore it as to your peril, as I will hopefully soon demonstrate to you. 56% of small businesses believe that the planet is facing a climate crisis, but only 36% have a plan to combat climate change. And 81% are not measuring environmental metrics at all. So SMEs can have a big impact on our economy's ability to transition to net zero overall, but many are not taking action or just don't know where to start. And while this is totally understandable when SMEs are under so much pressure at the moment, they are often resource constrained, both from a time and money perspective. But that doesn't mean it's not important that we shouldn't be supporting them to transition. So before we jump into the solutions to this conundrum, let's just take a step back and think about why should an SME even care? I'd like to make today's seminar as interactive as possible with the room. We do have a little poll for you today. And I'd like you to start, apologies, I think we've missed out the poll. Still back on that slide, apologies, I've skipped forward a little early. We're going to start by thinking about why should an SME care? So what is the key benefit to growing your business sustainably? Is it to reduce costs and increase profits? To create your own USP? To understand and meet customer expectations? To create a reputation as an ethical business? Or perhaps you don't think it's important at all. So I'll just give you a couple of seconds to have a think about that. And I'll just do it by a raise of hands. So who thinks the biggest benefit is to reduce costs and increase profits? Okay, we've probably got about, for those online, we've probably got about 5 or 10 people there. To create your own unique selling points. Okay, a couple there, yeah. To create and understand and meet customer expectations. Okay, that's definitely the biggest number so far. To create a reputation as an ethical business. Okay, that's a big driver as well. And I don't think it's important. Okay, fair enough. There's one person there. So hopefully I'll convince you differently by the end of the session today. So customer expectations and having a reputation as an ethical business were definitely the two bigger drivers there. I think those who want to do it for those reasons around reputation. That's fantastic. Yes, that can have a financial or a commercial impact, but that's more of an altruistic reason. I think, again, a lot of the time we need to really focus on the business rationale because that's what's going to convince people to take these actions. So thank you for that. Okay. So let's just carry on with why should SMEs care. So I hope that, considering you're all at an expo with the word sustainability in the title, you already know about the environmental reasons to care. And you understand the big picture about climate change and clearly the risks that it poses to our way of life. So I'm not going to dwell on that here today. The key issue is, what does this mean for you and your business today? What are the risks and opportunities related to sustainability for your business based here in the UK or around the world for those who are online? There are so many reasons why you need to seriously consider pushing this up your priority list. And as outlined on this slide, if you can make your business more sustainable by reducing your carbon footprint, you will improve your reputation in your community. You will save costs and gain efficiencies. This is particularly pertinent right now with inflation soaring, energy prices going up. You will ensure you remain compliant with changing regulations, and these are changing right now. A clear example of that, a very simple one, is the change to electric vehicles only from 2030. You might take advantage of financial incentives to be more sustainable, and there are plenty out there. You can future-proof your business by preempting the risks to it, and I'm going to come back to that in a little while. I work for a bank and we think about risk a lot, so that's one we'll definitely come back to. You can attract more or different investors to your business, and you can attract and retain the best talent of tomorrow. Again, I'll be coming back to that in due course. So just to come back to that fifth pillar around reducing risk, and just to jump into another poll here, what do you think is the biggest risk to your business from a sustainability perspective? I'll again do by a show of hands. So a freak weather event disrupting my business or my supply chain. Maybe I'm unable to get insurance. Customer preferences are changing. Regulation is changing. I can't hire talented people. I can't access finance or investment. Or the competition is ahead of me. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to have a think about what you think is the most important one there. So a freak weather event. Okay, we've got a couple. Here in the UK, we obviously have generally quite benign weather, but I'll come back to that later. Unable to get insurance. Nobody's experienced that yet, okay. Customer preferences changing. Yeah, a good number there. Regulation changing. And I think regulation has changed probably more for the larger businesses and certain sectors, but it will be coming down the line, I'm sure, to SMEs. Can't hire talented people. Okay, that's not a concern for people. Can't access finance or investment. Okay, that's probably one of the biggest so far, and the competition is ahead of me. So we're mostly scared about what other people are doing. Very interesting. I mean, clearly these are all risks that are potentially there. In HSBC, we talk about two key risks in relation to climate change. And by the way, we are already considering these when we make decisions about who we wish to lend to. You know, in particular in the larger corporate space, but it is coming down again to the SME space. So the first climate risk lens we talk about is physical risk. This is the risk of increasingly frequent extreme weather events directly impacting your business. This could lead to a reduction in value of your properties, difficulty selling properties if they're in a floodplain, for example, or even lack of availability of property insurance. There might be weather-related impacts to your supply chain. If you import goods from abroad, those other countries might be more at risk of those extreme weather events. Maybe the factory that you import from has been flooded or blown away. There will also potentially be direct sales or cash flow impacts from disruption caused by weather events on your business. And I'll give you an example from here in London. I did meet a business last year that had localized flooding, which is just, generally the cause of more extreme weather, that flooded their basement of their little restaurant, and they were put out of action for 2 to 3 months while they had to refurbish downstairs for their kitchen. But the worst thing was they didn't have insurance, and they had to rely on their landlord's insurance eventually to help them to replace that. So it really could have been the end of their business. So there's that direct physical impact. That's the first risk. The second risk is transition risk. The risk associated with the need to move to a zero carbon operating model. So this is about changing consumer demands, changing government policy or other developments in technology moving on, or the competition moving on, and you potentially being left behind. This is effectively, these two risks are effectively a list of, the second risk, the transition risk, is effectively a list of the opposite side to the benefits that I showed on the previous slide. I'll just bring them back up again to remind you. If you take advantage of these opportunities, you can be ahead of the curve. If you don't, you're at risk. You're generating risk for your business. So you might attract new talent by being ahead of the curve. If you don't, you might struggle to get talent. Yeah, so it's obviously very much connected. Okay. So just to build on this a little further, the list of risks and benefits that I've outlined are all connected to a variety of stakeholders that you as a small business have to manage every day. From your suppliers to your customers to your competitors to your staff and potential investors or even your bank. Yes, that's me. So it's really critical that you grasp that the fact that each of these stakeholders is considering your business with a lens of sustainability over the top. Now, I do acknowledge that the strength of that lens depends on the stakeholder and where they're at in their own journey, and it will vary from industry to industry and stakeholder to stakeholder. But I can promise you one thing, that lens is becoming stronger and stronger each year. And the topic is much more mainstream than it ever was even a few years ago. So if these stakeholders aren't already engaged in this topic with you, they will be soon. So let's dive into what that really means for you and your business by touching on just some of these stakeholders in more depth. Customers. Your customers might be large corporates that you're in the supply chain of, or they might be consumers that you're selling directly to. Either way, they care more and more about your sustainability credentials. I'm already seeing large corporates, such as supermarkets, for example, pushing down their sustainability strategies through their supply chain. So your customers are going to want to know, am I buying from a firm that is local, that is carbon neutral, that's taking climate action, that's meeting my changing demands, and that is sourcing sustainably itself? So you need to know where you are sourcing from and who you are supplying from and what their sustainability credentials are. Touching on staff, I've already touched on about attracting talent. Young people are very discerning about who they're willing to work for. You might be able to get the talent today, but will you be able to get the talent for tomorrow? So your staff are going to also want to know, am I working for a firm that is sustainable, that is carbon negative, that is taking climate action? Your competitors, are your competitors or is your industry overall ahead of you and changing more swiftly than you are? Are you keeping pace with that industry or lagging behind it? And what will this mean in due course if you don't keep up? Regulators. If you're in a regulated industry, obviously you'll see maybe some direct impact from this, but even if you're not, there is climate-related regulation coming. And regulators are going to want to know if your firm is compliant and able to make, for example, climate-related disclosures. Again, this is something that large businesses are already having to do, and I'm sure it will be coming down the pipeline to SMEs in due course. And then finally, your financial service providers, such as your bank or your insurance provider. They're going to want to know that they're providing their services to a business that is sustainable financially, not just environmentally, but financially. So, and that you will be sustainable financially for the medium to long term. So they're going to be thinking about what happens to you as a business if your customers don't want your products anymore, or if your competitors are ahead of you, and we'll be considering that. But on the flip side, you also need to be asking your bank and your insurers how they can help you, because there are solutions out there, and you need to make sure that your insurers in particular are going to continue to cover you as a business. So we know that being sustainable is critical to the long-term financial performance of your business, but where do you start? You understand that sustainability as a high-level concept, but what does that really mean for you and your specific business? The first thing you need to do is to understand the impact that you are having as a business on the environment. And in order to do that, you need to measure it. After all, what gets measured gets done as it goes. So how is sustainability measured? And apologies for those of you who may already know this, but what I find is a lot of SMEs don't, so it's important to explain it. So the environmental impact of a business is commonly categorized into 3 different scopes, which you can see on this graphic. The 3 scopes first appeared in the Greenhouse Gas Protocol of 2001, and today the 3 scopes are the basis for all mandatory greenhouse gas reporting in the UK. You will see large corporates, including HSBC as it happens, already reporting on these. So let's just talk about these 3 scopes very briefly. Scope 1 covers emissions that you make directly as a company. For example, while running your own heating and vehicles. This is the biggest scope and is relevant to every single SME out there. It's your own energy usage and transportation. Scope 2 are the emissions that you make indirectly. For example, the energy that you use, where do you source it from? And how is that, what is the carbon impact of that? And then finally, scope 3, this is where all of the even wider emissions, both up and down your supply chain, that you are indirectly responsible. How is your product used? Where are you supplying it from? How is it? How are the component parts of your product pulled together in the first place? And what's the sustainability impact of that? So as you identify each of the carbon emissions in your business, and whether they are scope 1, 2, or 3, you'll need to assign a carbon value to them. And the easiest way to do this is just to grab a carbon calculator. There are lots of them available online. Just get Googling and find one that meets your needs. They vary in complexity, they vary in cost of access. And I'm going to touch on this a little bit later in the tools and resources that are available. But yeah, just get Googling and find something really simple to start with. You don't need to overcomplicate it. Keep it simple and upgrade over time as you need to. And you can use that then to calculate your footprint, and you know where you're starting from. As an SME, you are likely stretched for resources, such as time and money, and you can't do everything at once. So once you've got your measurements and you've understood your current footprint, you need to think about what actions you would now like to take. And I really encourage you just to start with the Scope 1 emissions. So these are the ones, again, that are directly within your control. And as I already said, the biggest one for most businesses is transportation. So that is where you should start to think about. Could you or your staff use public transport more often? Do your staff need to actually commute in every day? Or could they hybrid work? Do you have a delivery vehicle that you need to replace? Another big area is obviously your direct energy usage. Consider how you can reduce that energy usage. Do all of your staff members turn off their laptops every night? Could they reduce the brightness of their monitors? Could they replace the lighting in there with LED lighting? Or could you encourage your landlord to improve the insulation in your rented premises? They're all very simple actions, but they can make a big difference. And by the way, most importantly, reduce your costs. Moving on to Scope 2. These are your indirect emissions with energy usage. So again, just review your energy providers and understand what the carbon footprint is of the energy that you supply, and could you consider switching to a more sustainable provider. And then if you've truly reduced your emissions as far as possible under Scope 1 and Scope 2, you can, of course, turn to Scope 3. I'm not going to spend any time on this today because I think there's plenty to be going with Scope 1 and Scope 2. But typical actions might be sourcing from a different supplier that's more physically close to you, so you reduce air mileage of the product delivery, or perhaps understanding the sustainability credentials of your suppliers. And of course, as you take each of these actions, you can make a note in your carbon calculator of what you have done and how it's impacted, and start to really measure the impact you're having. And then you can use that to talk to all of those stakeholders that I talked about earlier, to really help engage with them and help them understand your sustainability credentials. So I do understand, however, that this is all very easy to say and perhaps harder to do, and many entrepreneurs are poor of time or resources and expertise, so it can be quite daunting to start. So let's just quickly touch on what tools and resources are available to support you out there. At HSBC, we are committed to working with companies of all sizes to build a greener economy, and to help remove the barriers that companies face to transition to net zero. Part of that support is providing information, like I'm doing today, and giving you insights. And so that's why we're here today, to touch on the tools and resources that are available. But part of that is also to provide tangible support, funding to help you invest in your business to shift it to a greener economy. So we're going to touch on both of those now. So firstly, on the left-hand side here, you can see the external resources. These are not HSBC resources, these are external to us, but they are, a lot of them, partners that we have worked with directly. In particular, the Broadway Initiative, we are a founding member of that, and that is a conglomerate of lots of different organisations and businesses intent on supporting SMEs to transition to net zero. The Sme Climate Hub, the first one there, is fantastically useful website with lots of different resources for SMEs. The FSB has a skills hub with specific content around sustainability, and the CBI has also launched a Be More Green toolkit. So a lot of the general SME business organisations do have a lot of support out there. And like I said, much of that did not exist even 12 months ago, so definitely check out their websites. I've also mentioned on here Heart of the City. There's a very specific one for London. They're very focused on the City of London, but they do also have a climate action toolkit that is available online to anybody else outside of London. And I've talked about carbon calculators. Just one example is the Carbon Trust's carbon calculator there, which is really useful, and I believe it might be free as well. Of course, there are lots of sustainability consultants out there as well if you're willing to pay for them. But I think there's so much out there online, it's really just worth taking the resources that are available. And then finally, just to touch very briefly on what we have available at HSBC, we do have a Sustainability Hub. Just Google HSBC Sustainability Hub and that will come up. And within that, there is a guide on how to get started on sustainability. We also have a sustainability assessment tool. This is a tool where you can just answer, it takes about 10-15 minutes, you can answer a number of questions. It's based on your sector and the size of your business, and it helps you identify the types of actions that you might want to take to get started. And then finally, I talked about funding, which is really important. We have launched, as of November last year, our Sme Green Fund. This is specifically to support businesses to invest in transitioning to net zero. There is an eligibility criteria, but as long as you are using 90% or more of the funds to transition to net zero, then you can access this fund. And when you do access it and provide proof to us that you have used it for those green purposes, we will give you 1% cash back on the principal of the loan. So there's a little carrot there to encourage you to use that funding. And if you would ever like to speak to anybody, I do run a team of business specialists. We're based in branches across the UK. You've also got the telephone number there to call us to book an appointment with one of my team if you would ever like to talk about anything. I will leave it there because I've run right up to 1 o'clock. I don't know if Scott's available to run with Q&A, but I hope that's been useful for you today, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jenny. Any questions from the audience? If we do, please put a hand up. Do we have the microphone? It's back there. Okay, well, I've got a question here first. So let's say I'm an SME. What's the first step that I should take if I'm looking to reduce my carbon footprint?
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Hopefully it came across in the presentation. It's that really simple stuff, the scope 1 stuff. So the things that are directly within your control. So controlling your energy usage, so how you are using the assets in your business, from your computers and your lights through to, if you're a manufacturer, all of the manufacturing equipment in there. So how you use that. And that ultimately comes down to people. And driving change in people and your teams. So you have to, the good news is that it's free to do. The bad news is that it takes time and effort to change people's habits, but that's definitely the best thing you can do. And then obviously you can potentially replace those assets if you think that you can find a way to make them more energy efficient. So yeah, energy usage.
Okay, thank you. Could you just put your hand up again, please, sir? It's the gentleman in the front row. Just state who you are and where you're from. And we'll need to keep it quite brief, I'm afraid.
Hi, I'm Steve Thomas from Our Resources. Question just regarding ESG ratings and sustainability-linked loans. Does HSB, are you guys involved in that sort of process?
Yes, we are. Again, that is something that is more at the larger end of the business. So our large corporate segment definitely offers sustainability-linked loans. For those in the rest of the audience, just to explain what that means. So rather than being a loan to directly help you transition to net zero, for example, putting in solar panels or something like that, this is a loan that is just overall measuring your sustainability or your carbon credentials, and then ratcheting pricing based on that. So as the business becomes more sustainable, you actually get access to cheaper financing. And ultimately, we believe the reason we can do that is because you have a more financially sustainable business, and so you're a better credit risk. So yes, we do offer that, but it tends to be for the larger businesses. Again, I think that is probably something that over time will come down to the SME market. The main reason it hasn't at the moment is because it's quite onerous from the sense of the type of KPIs and MI that you have to provide to evidence your level of sustainability, and SMEs aren't generally sophisticated enough to provide that. But if we can get that into the mass market, I definitely think that will be coming. Over time, whether it's climate risk or credit risk, the two are going to merge, and ultimately finance will consider both as part of the overall risk to lend. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's all we've got time for. Thank you very much, Jenni Adams.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.